for being here. I am so excited for tonight's conversation. Honestly, the biggest challenge I think we're going to have tonight is the fact that I could talk about this stuff all night long. The reality is that there is an enormous amount of information and resources out there, which frankly, I think is part of the problem. It's part of the reason why it can be so overwhelming to even get your job search started. So what we're gonna do tonight is really break that down into a simple step-by-step checklist so that you can leave not just feeling organized and more confident and more informed, but also you have links to go deeper and get more resources in the specific areas that you feel like you really need to work on. Some of you I know have been searching for quite a while, and some of you are just starting to think about getting a leg up on competition and really putting those first initial steps in place to get your job search started. So, as many of you already know, I'm Emily Aries, BossUp's founder and CEO, and here at BossUp, we really strive to ensure that you craft a happy, healthy, and sustainable career path. I started BossUp to help women navigate career transition because I had gone through a few career transitions already at the age of 26 that could have gone a lot better. Let me just put it that way. I had a job that I loved, but I found myself completely and totally burnt out before the age of 25. I'd gone from being a college athlete to having no form of fitness in my life for those first 3 years of intense on-ramp to reality type career starting pad or launching pad. And while I enjoyed having a leadership role at a young age, helping pass initiatives I felt strongly about as a political organizer, serving on behalf of President Obama, you know, I worked all the time for 3 years and I totally lost my sense of agency over my own life. What also happened was, in addition to not taking very good care of my body and mind during those 3 years, is I found myself in a really toxic relationship. So I know just how hard it is to make a career transition from a place of weakness, right? From a place of feeling like I'm stuck in this toxic environment and I'm not sure how to reconnect with my sense of strength and personal power. And I honestly think that for us women still today, it's a little bit harder for us even now to feel like it's socially acceptable for us to take care of ourselves as women before we take care of every single other person around us. So for anyone here tonight who's feeling stuck, who's feeling a little burnt out, who's feeling maybe a little overwhelmed, you're in good company and this community is here for you. I really believe that the work we're doing at BossUp has transformed lives, and part of that is just by creating opportunities like tonight to come together around our shared goals. So what we're gonna really dive into tonight is, first I wanna demystify those 5 kind of sticking points that keep us stuck in jobs that we don't love and break through those psychological barriers together. But what I want to spend the most amount of time on, and again, I could talk all night about this, so I'm going to try to keep things really tight and punctual so that we have plenty of time for Q&A at the end, is the 8 steps I really believe are the initial critical first steps to take even before you're actively searching for your next job, but maybe when you're 3 to 6 months out from starting your job search. And really, if you've been searching for a while now, these don't hurt. This is a good refresher and it's a good way to get organized. If you haven't already, make sure you open those reminder emails that I sent you through Eventbrite earlier today. They have a downloadable checklist for you, a workbook that we're going to work through together. And yes, I want to reveal what I believe is the #1 way to ensure that your search is really successful, that this transition works. So continue throughout tonight's conversation to tweet at me at BossUpORG or use that hashtag #CareerPregame. I'm monitoring Twitter throughout the broadcast right here beside me. So let's dive in together. To give a little context before we begin, I personally believe that right now we are in a really critical opportunity moment for those of us who are thinking about leveling up in our lives and in our careers. Over the course of the summer, specifically in July, we saw American jobs created at a rate of 100,000 more in the month of July than any economist predicted. So much so, this amount of growth was finally seeing this sort of economic recovery hit the middle class, where job creation really makes such a big impact. There were 100,000 jobs created, more jobs created than predicted. And that was such a huge surprise almost, or such an overperformance, that it caused the US Bureau of Labor Statistics to increase their estimates for job creation throughout the rest of 2016. So while you might have seen the jobs report that came out last week saying that August was a little bit slower than expectations had been predicting, keep in mind those expectations had just been ratcheted up. And frankly, I don't think anything gets done in August, but I think that's a very DC opinion of me, since I live in the nation's capital where it's too hot to do anything in August. But frankly, to make a long story short, hiring is up right now, so much so that the representatives at the US Bureau of Labor said that we're in for a blistering amount of job growth through the end of this year. At the same time, people are pretty dang unhappy at work. In particular, us millennials that people like to talk so much about. Gallup just released a study last week showing that 50% of us are actively looking for our next job. So employers know that retention matters and are creating more sustainable cultures at work, because that's what actually keeps millennials and keeps all of us sustainably successful. So if you are in one of those crushing burnout work cultures that so many of us have been through before, if you're in a work environment where you loathe getting up every day and having to go into the office, quietly, calmly, and confidently, let's get your stuff together and let's get you out of there, because now is a great time to strike while the iron is hot, okay? So why don't we? Why do we sometimes stay languishing behind our desks, staying in jobs that we feel comfortable in, even when maybe that comfort turns into complacency? A couple of reasons. These first three in particular I see come up all the time with the women I work with at Boss Step: confidence, clarity, and courage. When we don't have any confidence, we feel like our identity is under attack. Say you're working with a micromanaging boss or a megalomaniac, coworker. Your confidence in your own ability to be a leader, or to think creatively, or to stretch yourself outside of your comfort zone can be slowly chipped away at over the course of adulthood and over the course of sort of inertia taking its toll and defining you as a static person with only one set of skills. It's really easy to lose touch with the power of possibility. It's easy to lose touch with our own confidence over time, especially when we fall into patterns at work or in the role that we've been in, especially when that role or that job doesn't align with our true calling or our true purpose. Clarity can dissipate quickly as well over the course of our lives. There are different points in our lives, I feel like, especially towards career pivot moments, when we might know what we don't want, but what we want is a little more amorphous. It's a little bit more difficult to define. And that lack of clarity prevents us from moving forward. It causes us to procrastinate because we're waiting for the perfect job opportunity to make itself known to us. And it can be easy for that clarity to become murkier over time, especially when you've achieved something you've always been wanting to achieve, when you've arrived at the finish line, and then you look around and you're like, is this it? Is this all? Courage works in a similar way, right? When we fall into a pattern of defining ourselves in a certain way, say we've been applying a certain kind of tactic for getting ahead at work, we feel this comfort around certainty. But a comfort in a certain predictable, reliable environment can make us very, very risk averse. And I get it, right? There's money on the line when you're talking about job change, and financial insecurity is real. But when we forbid ourselves from even exploring the risks involved with making a bold and courageous leap, we can clip our own wings along the way. And then finally, the more practical component to why we don't always necessarily get ourselves out of a toxic work environment is time. When you're being run into the ground in your day job, who the hell has time to put in all the effort of finding your way out, right? When you've got someone riding you, when you are in a job that just feels hopeless and helpless, finding another job can feel like a part-time job. And just finding that time and making that time can be such a challenge, which is why I'm gonna encourage you to take the slow and steady route and really work your to-do list in a way that's manageable and not overwhelming. And finally, I wanna bring up something called sunk costs, which is part of an economic principle that really is boiled down to the saying, a winner never quits and a quitter never wins. Have you ever heard that? This idea that, successful people never quit anything, that you shouldn't be a quitter. I remember when I was in college, I was accepted to college as a varsity athlete, and I ended up getting injured and quitting my varsity sport. And I'll tell you what, quitting being an athlete was like severing off a piece of my body, right? It was like losing a sense of your own identity. But sometimes those sunk costs, all the time and energy and effort we have sunk into a goal, all of that money or identity or effort that we've poured into a job or a workplace, maybe we moved across the country for an opportunity, even when it's not working out, even when it's clearly no longer serving you, quitting can feel impossible because of how far you've already come. So let's debunk these myths, okay? Because the reality is that these psychological roadblocks only have power over us when we are unconscious of them. The antidote to each of these is on the right side of your screen now. The antidote to having that chipped away confidence is community. Surround yourself with people who lift you up and reflect back to you the most courageous, capable person that you can possibly be. Sometimes we ourselves, me and myself and I, we can be our own worst critics, whereas your best friend might actually be a much better person to reinforce your sense of confidence. So surround yourself with a community that you can rely on. When you're lacking in clarity, you're going to have to get still. You're going to have to make time for reflection. And I know for those type A to-do list lovers like myself, stillness is not very comfortable. So whether that means beginning a practice like meditation or daily journaling, or simply taking a long walk at the end of each day with yourself and your own thoughts, really making the time for internal reflection is how you're going to start to access that clarity. And you have to be willing to listen to what comes up while you're in that moment of reflection. The antidote to feeling risk averse and not having courage is experimentation. When we stop seeing it like, oh my God, I'm going to have to take this huge leap and jump off a cliff and build my airplane on the way down, which sounds really scary and awful. What if we think about small, low-risk ways to experiment with job transition, to just make micro movements so we can start to build up our sense of courage in a reasonable way, right? You don't need to risk it all to find your dream job, but you do need to make concrete, measured, calculated risks along the way. When time is the challenge, what's really a challenge is your ability to set boundaries, which is something we work on a lot more at Bossed Up Bootcamp, where we help people, and you can go to my YouTube channel on this too. There's a lot there on assertive communication. Only you can set the boundaries you need to make your job search a priority. No one else will do that for you. And I'm sorry, that's tough news, that's tough love, but it's so critically important to recognize that if this were someone else that you loved who was looking for a job, you would make the time, right? We would draw those boundaries. We would lay ourselves out on the line for someone we loved. We need to show ourselves that same love by saying no to other things, by saying no to other asks of our time and our attention. Your attention is a precious, limited resource. So give yourself the time of day and give yourself some of that attention. And last on this list, what else stands in our way? Those sunk costs that keep us going, that keeps inertia pulling us forward. I want you to keep in mind something called opportunity costs. Every time we stick with a goal or we stay in a job just because we've already made such an investment that to leave it would be absurd, we can't even calculate how many opportunities we might be missing out on. So it's important to keep in mind, yes, you might have moved across the country for that job, or you might have gone above and beyond to really land this job. Maybe you were in vetting for 6 months to finally land this leadership position you've been in for 3 months. If it's not working, you can't even calculate how many other opportunities you could be missing out on by just staying. So you're here tonight because I know you are ready to make the commitment. You have made the time. You're willing and able to overcome these psychological challenges. And I want you to keep in mind the one most important piece of how that effort and how all of that drive and all of that ambition and all of your vision around your next big step will actually come to fruition. It's by having a concrete action plan. So now's the time, if you haven't already, get that workbook out that I sent out earlier today. If you printed it out, great. We're going to go through it point by point together. The most important factor is not that you've got a clear sense of where you're headed per se. Vision is important, but it's not sufficient. The most important factor, the highest predictor of success when it comes to achieving a long-term goal like landing your best job ever, is by focusing on the concrete action steps, your action plan. And that really is why, subtle plug here, which is why you should join the Bossed Up's new challenge, the Pregame Your Career Change Challenge. Give me a tweet if you've already joined the challenge. We just launched it yesterday. We've had hundreds of people from all over the country sign up already. It's amazing to see how many people have joined in already because this is our first of its kind challenge. Also totally free. It's going to be an 8-week challenge in which we come together as a community of accountability to, in a step-by-step, in-depth way, go through these 8 steps that we're going to talk about tonight in even greater detail in real time together. So we're going to hold you accountable. It's also sponsored by Rent the Runway, which is so awesome because they are gifting all of our Pregame Your Career Change Challenge participants with some insider discounts and a grand prize for our grand prize winner. So join us at bossedup.org/pregame. I'll tell you more about it towards the end of tonight's broadcast, but bossedup.org/pregame. It's also on the front page of our website. You should totally join and get your friends to join too. It's going to be, like I said, it's a totally free communal job search challenge where we're going to help celebrate each other's successes and overcome those challenges together. So let's dive right in. We're going to dive into those 8 steps I mentioned earlier, the 8 steps to take now to start your job search. If you haven't already, shoot me a tweet at bossedup.org to tell me if you have any questions throughout tonight's conversation and to tell me more about why you joined tonight, what you're hoping to get out of it. Here we go. All right. Step 1, before you get anything else started, I want you to definitely take some time to be introspective and clarify your goals and your ideal audience. So your ideal audience in this instance means the ideal employer or the kind of person you hope to be sitting across the table from you when you're interviewing for your next killer job. This is a really important first step because if you don't ground yourself in your own priorities, everyone else's priorities are going to take hold, right? If you don't tell yourself what you're really looking for, it'll be easier to not hold out for your ideal job. You'll probably compromise on some of those big deal breakers for yourself by focusing on other people's needs instead of what you're really looking for, what will actually set you up to be sustainably successful. If you haven't done this, you're probably ping-ponging from one job to the next, filling everyone's needs, but then getting bored, getting complacent, feeling like you're not growing 6 months into every job you take. This clarification is an essential first step. So start by figuring out, what am I already good at? What do I want to learn? What would I love to do? And importantly, using empathy, right? Taking that really empathic approach, put yourself in the shoes of your audience. What kind of person or company needs that kind of help, needs the kind of help that you would like to ideally provide? And that should hopefully be a varied audience, but one in which you can sort of get inside the head of your audience in advance of all the next steps we're going to talk about. If you are feeling lost at this step, that's a very common challenge. We don't have time tonight to go all the way in depth on clarifying your dream job, although that definitely warrants its own book, if not its own online course. You can start by downloading the totally free workbook, the ebook I wrote, the Bossed Up Life Tracker, to get help getting clear and getting motivated and getting your action plan together. So the first part of that in particular will help you clarify your goals and what you're really looking for. But like I said, if you don't do this first critical step, it can lead to sort of a pendulum swing where you go from one kind of a job that you don't like, swinging dramatically to a totally different industry or a totally different kind of place. Oops, sorry about that, folks. Or a totally different, polar opposite job because you're being reactionary instead of measured. Once you've got a clear sense of your goals, where you're headed, and your audience, the ideal employer who you want to be reading your resume and saying, hell yeah, that's the person I want here on my team, get ready to rock that resume, right? Take time. We all know that this is still, even in today's digital age, the resume is still an important piece of the job search puzzle. So I broke it down to just some core components to this that we're going to go into much more detail in the Career Pregame Challenge, or the Pregame Your Career Change Challenge. First, to remember, content matters, right? What is actually on your resume matters. Not such a big news flash here, but start with your most relevant experiences. Cut to the content that matters most, right? What is most relevant to your audience? That's what should be at the top of your resume, the most relevant and recent. I would almost say the most relevant over the most recent. So consider your audience. What are they looking for? Make sure that stands out on your resume. Use clear verbs to demonstrate the transferable skills. This one's a common piece of advice you will hear, but it is so critically important. Please stop saying things like utilize or supported or helped. Those are meaningless verbs, right? Helped do what? Or utilized what, right? Tell me that you wrote something, that you managed a project, that you coded a piece of software, whatever it might be. Use the verbs that demonstrate the transferable skills that people are actually looking for in your ideal job descriptions. And those keywords really, really matter. In addition to content, style matters too. I can't tell you how many brilliant people's resumes I see that are just so dense and overwhelming that nobody's going to read them. I don't want to read a block of text from one margin to the next as much as anybody doesn't. So keep it easily readable. Maintain lots of healthy white space. Keep it concise whenever possible. And obviously use legible fonts. For me, this means at least a font size of 10, preferably 11 or 12. You have to mess with the margins to keep your font size above 10, then do it. But I still believe in the power of a one-page resume, although it does vary from industry to industry, which is why it's so critically important not just to bring in a career coach, but to get feedback on your resume by people already in the industry. So if you're going from higher ed to research and development in the science industries, you need to make sure that your academic resume translates well into the startup, chemical engineering world that you're entering. That's the best way to really learn the industry best practices, the specifics that they're looking for. In your handout, as well as here in the slide, you'll see a link to a more in-depth article on 7 common resume mistakes to avoid as well, if this is something you really want to work on further with me or with our community or with the resources at Bossed Up. So let's say you've already clarified your goals and audience. You've used that to help rock your resume and make sure it's aligned with your audience's needs and highlighting the the kinds of skills that you feel good at and the skills that you want to gain experience in. The next step in my book, which could even come before your resume, it doesn't really matter. The order here on this one and your resume one is not that important. Write an objective statement. An objective statement is one of those sentences that typically appears at the top of some people's resumes, although oftentimes the folks I work with who are mid-career don't have room necessarily if they want to keep it on one page. But it's a one-sentence cover letter, which is why I love objective statements so much, because they are concise, which I believe is so important in today's digital era. It's adaptable for so many mediums, whether it's the outreach email you're sending with your resume attached to it, or if it's actually being adapted into an actual cover letter, although I don't see that many cover letters being requested anymore, or it can be utilized online in a variety of ways we're gonna clarify soon. This is even a one-liner that you can bust out at a cocktail hour, at a conference too. So writing an objective statement breaks down into two concise parts. One is to define yourself in a way that is salient, right? That brings up the most important pieces about what you do or what you're capable of and the kinds of work you're looking for. So here we say, Jane's an experienced UX designer with a social justice focus. That's the start of her objective statement. And then define what you're actually after, what kind of role you're seeking. So Jane's an experienced UX designer with a social justice focus who seeks an impact-oriented startup environment with a strong team dynamic. That is one itty-bitty little sentence that tells us a lot about Jane. It tells us what she's skilled at. I'm sure she's skilled at lots of things, by the way, but this is what she's most skilled at and wants to highlight in terms of her skill set. It also tells us what she's passionate about, right? She's not just looking to become a UX designer just anywhere. She wants to actually help further social justice causes at an impact-oriented organization, right? We know that about her too. And obviously she's looking for not just being the lone wolf designer, she wants to join a strong team. So in one little sentence, she has whittled down her skills, her passion, and what she's looking for. Oh dear, that's a phone call coming in for me. Forgive me, I should have put that on silent. It's now on silent. So where was I? So the beautiful thing about this one sentence objective statement is that it looks simple, but it actually takes a lot of time to figure this out, because in the first step here, you've already been talking about what am I good at, what do I want to learn, what would I love to do, all of those questions. When you whittle that down into its most essential components, you should be able to communicate that in one or two sentences. That objective statement is so helpful for not limiting who you are, right? Because what you do isn't all inclusive of who you are, but it does make it clear to others the context that you want them to understand you in, so that they can help you find job opportunities that are relevant to you. And that's really what an objective statement is all about. And obviously I'm in New York City right now, so between my phone blowing up and the fire truck flying by the window right now in Chelsea, it's a busy boss life here and never sleeps in New York. So are you all still with me? How we doing? Oh yeah, we got a good number of people still on. I wish I could see all your faces. Someday we're gonna get better software where that's actually feasible. But how are we doing? Check in with me on Twitter at bosseduporg to give me a shout. Thank you, Kayla, for weighing in earlier. We're just about halfway through this list, so I'm gonna dive right back into it. I just wanted to say hello and make sure you're still here while my phone is blowing up and fire trucks are passing by. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again so we can get right back to it. Here we go. Okay, so step 4 of 8, and this is so unique to the digital age that we now live in, is to snap a shiny new headshot. And you might be thinking, oh my goodness, this is so vain. Headshots are just for 20-something Instagram followers and blah, blah, blah. No, a headshot actually matters, and getting a professional headshot makes a really big difference. Part of the reason why headshots are so helpful is because I like to think it's almost like you're giving the algorithms a cookie at LinkedIn and Facebook in particular. Unless you get married or have a baby, updating your profile pic is probably one of the highest liked items you will ever post in your entire social media existence. So utilize the fact that those algorithms, LinkedIn and Facebook's algorithms, love sharing your shiny new headshot with the world, with your followers. So I like to update my headshot in conjunction with big product launches or with big career transitions. Use the fact that those algorithms really love a new profile picture to your benefit, right? Highlight your new online presence or your new job search focus when you update your social media profiles with a new headshot. And, you know, people really can tell nowadays the difference between a selfie and a headshot, and a selfie just doesn't do the trick, unless maybe you're like a super artistic person in the fashion industry and you like took a Polaroid of yourself or something. I would always recommend to go pro when it comes to getting a set of headshots. And you can really do that without breaking the bank. You can do that by, you know, having a friend of a friend who's the new photographer on the block who wants to gain some experience for their portfolio, right? You can get the amateur discount if you look around, or you can go to websites like Thumbtack, where I found great photographers for reasonable rates. But whatever you do, getting your own headshot can be expensive. So try to sync up with a group or a friend to get 2 headshots taken at one time, so you can sort of split the rate and be respectful of the photographer's time and talents. But they might be more willing to give you a discount if you give them a bulk amount of business. That's also part of the reason why we include a headshot in every single Bossed Up Bootcamp that we do. Bossed Up Bootcamp, for those of you who don't know, is our weekend-long training program for women navigating career transition. And we include a headshot in every weekend because it really is part and parcel with career transition nowadays. One of my amazing alums, Carrie Ann, just landed an amazing new job. I am thinking of her tonight because I just interviewed her for her Fierce Friday interview that's going to be published to our blog on Friday. And you'll hear in that interview just how important this new headshot was to actually getting her all this attention on social media while she was in the midst of her job search. So she really used that to her benefit. And you can actually watch a phenomenal webinar that I was so glad and so proud to host with my friend, a professional headshots photographer, Victoria Ruan, who I have actually employed more than once to take my headshots at Bossed Up's website. Right here, this link is how a new headshot can boost your online brand. It actually links you to our blog, which has a video webinar that you can watch all about how Victoria recommends proceeding and planning and executing a great headshot session for those of you who are looking for a new job, because it's a little more complicated than it might seem. You really want to go in with a clear set of expectations. So don't take your headshot until you know your goal and audience. All right, keep that in mind, and you're going to take all of that information to your headshots photographer and know your industry, and then make the most of your headshots session. All right, step 5. So you've rocked your resume, you've gotten clear on your goal and audience, you have written your objective statement, and you've taken a fancy headshot. Now it's time to prepare your online presence. This is where we're really starting to bring it all home. I want you to align your message across different platforms. That means add in your new fancy handy dandy objective statement as your Twitter bio line, as the top line of your LinkedIn profile, in the first line of your Facebook profile, right? And update your headshot so it's the same across all platforms, Instagram included. Whatever it might be, when you're on the prowl for a new job, even when you're doing so on the down low, you might not say it explicitly that you're an experienced UX designer looking for your next big opportunity. You might want to just increase the professional nature of your social media presence. So do a full social media cleanse, take down or lock up with privacy settings the stuff that might be on there that you don't want potential employers to be looking at. In this digital age, we can't be too careful on that. Now, if you're thinking to me, Emily, I'm fine, I have nothing to worry about because I'm too cool for school, I'm better than that, I'm not on any social media platforms, I quit Facebook, and I quit Twitter, or I never got onto Twitter, I would not recommend proceeding in that conservative manner. So don't be better than social media, because it is actually a very powerful way to crowdsource your job search, right? But as opposed to avoiding social media altogether, I also don't want you to be oversharing or be coming off as desperate on social media. I'm not saying you should go on social media and tell people how badly you need a new job. Desperation is something that people run from, and they can smell it on you a mile away, which is also part of the reason why starting your job search before you desperately need a new job is advised. Now, if you desperately need a new job and you're tuning in tonight, don't let this worry you, okay? This is okay, but it's important that you focus on your strengths. You focus on the value you can bring to the next employer that you're looking for, not your needs. Focus on your strengths, not your needs. So, and that carries through to social media especially. If you have already done all those things and you're still not getting what you want, consider looking into making a CV or resume site, right? Consider a one-page website that you can put up even for free on websites like Wix.com, where you can actually create your own website, like bradneedsajob.com or susieissearching.com, whatever it might be. That's a great visual way to share who you are, show a little bit of personality, put your objective statement on there, put your headshot on there, link to your experiences. Here's where you can download your resume. And this is especially true if you have any kind of a portfolio. If you're a writer, if you're an artist, if you are someone who's built lots of cool, apps with coding or something, if you have different projects that you'd like to showcase, your own personal website is a great way to do this. I also want to just back up and say that social media can feel a little overwhelming, but I also do want to link to this resource, which is in your workbook tonight, where I did a really quick and dirty and awesome webinar with Emily De La Cruz, a social media strategist who is out of Atlanta now, where you can watch and go into much greater detail how exactly to prep your online presence. Step 6 on the checklist. Now remember, this is like something we're going to stretch out week to week to week. So don't get overwhelmed here. There's a lot of action items, but the good thing is that this checklist, this job search checklist, is all inclusive. This is really everything you need to get started in an organized way. Next, you're going to want to learn how to tell your story. When you are meeting someone for an informational interview, or you're in an interview itself, or let's say you're talking to a new potential person that you met at a conference who might be in a position to help you, please do not put them to sleep by just reading off your resume. Your resume brags better than you do. And it gives me no great pleasure to say this, because women should be able to brag all that we want. But for us women in particular, people don't like when we brag about ourselves as much as people don't seem to mind it when you've got more male privilege on your side. People don't like women who sound uppity, okay? And that likability matters in the job search. So where does that leave us, right? Let the resume do the bragging for you. Put the concrete numbers in it. Reference the resume, even if you're in an interview, saying, I think my resume, demonstrates my superior experience on this, or my outstanding experience on this. Let me tell you a story. And then don't rattle off your sales numbers. Don't ramble off your, highlight reel. I want you to tell someone a story with a beginning, middle, and an end. Explain your values in action by telling us about a choice moment you faced. And preferably in that choice moment, you demonstrate the kind of values that you know your potential future employer is looking for. Now, this is a really nuanced thing, but you already heard me do this tonight. You already heard me tell you my personal story, why I started Bossed Up, why I believe so strongly in burnout, and why I believe it's so hard to get out of a toxic relationship. These are stories that I've lived. And trust me, I have a 20-minute version that's much more detailed, and then there's a 2-minute version when I am kicking off a webinar. That takes practice, and I put together a YouTube video that goes into more detail on this that you can link to from your workbook tonight. If this is something you struggle with in the interview process or making it to round 2 of the interviews to get off that dang phone interview, you know, this could be the key part where you can really grow your skill set here. How to tell a story that makes you irresistible to employers. And finally, the last and most critical step in preparing for your most strategic job search yet is to go ahead and network like a boss with one-on-one meetings. I live in Washington, D.C., where the town is obsessed with transactional relationship building, right? But this does not have to feel icky. And I firmly believe that this strategy that is so overused in Washington, D.C., the political capital of the world, can be exported successfully to wherever you live, right? Even if this isn't the norm, this can be a huge skill and an excellent tactic to really learn about job opportunities that you might not learn about. And I actually said the last one, but this is number 7 out of 8. Duh, this is the second to last, the penultimate piece of advice here. One-on-one meetings start by making your target list. Who do you want to connect with? You might not even know the person exactly, but you might know the company. So make your actual list. I'm a fan of spreadsheets because I'm just type A and hyper organizational like that. So if you're like me, go ahead, make that spreadsheet. Put the companies that you're looking at on that spreadsheet. Head over to LinkedIn, do some research, find some people in the departments who you might have, you know, a friend of a friend type connection with. And meet people out at networking events or conferences as well, but make your list of who you want to follow up with for a more in-depth conversation. These meetings don't count when you're at a packed bar full of half-drunk, you know, politicians. That's not what a one-on-one meeting is. You want to make sure you get the business card, but then follow up and be persistent, right? Make that ask for a half-hour phone call or to come to their office and learn more about how they got to where they are today, right? Make the ask to build a relationship and be persistent because most people do want to help. Most people do want to help, but most people are super overwhelmed and super busy, just like you and me. So be persistent and maybe allude to how this could be a reciprocally beneficial relationship too. So what if you're a 20-year-old recent grad and they're a 50-year-old senior executive? You might be able to share with them some of what you've been learning about in your latest classes, or you might help them with their social media, and they can help you with a lay of the land in terms of the industry trends right now. So regardless how you think you might not have as much to give as you have to gain in a relationship, keep in mind everybody has a unique talent and gift, and everybody can share those unique talents and gifts regardless of age, experience, seniority, etc. So really strive to create those reciprocal relationships, and the key to doing that is to share your story and learn theirs. That's how you can really figure out what it is that they need and what they want and what they're struggling with, so you can help as much as you're asking for help too. And I go into much greater detail in this in an article that was picked up in the Chicago Tribune and lots of other places, all about how to master the one-on-one networking meeting, or really the other headline we put under it was how to have networking meetings without wasting people's time, right? There's a formula in that article that I linked to where I go into much greater detail if this is the piece of the puzzle that you really feel like you need to work on further. Finally, when it's all said and done, right, you have, let's take a look back. You've clarified your goals and audience. So you're the one driving your job search, not desperation, not other people's needs. You know what you're looking for. You know why you're searching to begin with. And you're not feeling lost or like you're just going to head in whichever direction the wind blows, right? Which is often how we take our first couple jobs, right? We just take whatever we can get because we're not sure we're worth more than that. I hope by this point in time that you've got the sense of self and confidence to say, I'm worth a job that makes me sustainably happy, or I'm worth a job that puts me in a position in which I feel sustainable. And that is the kind of strategic search that this is all about. You've rocked your resume, you've written an objective statement, you've snapped a new headshot with the help of a professional, you've updated your online presence with that headshot and with that objective statement, and you've learned to tell your story, and you've started practicing telling your story and listening to other people's stories through those networking meetings. Now it's time to officially start your search the smart way. Although I would argue that by taking all of those steps, you already have started your job search in a lot of different ways. When you are talking to people in companies or in industries that you want to break into, make sure you're asking them about their team needs. Because when you hear that a company is struggling when it comes to, I don't know, let's say HR, or when it comes to really controlling their message, or their sales department is overwhelmed, when you hear about a company that's facing a problem, you can more easily position yourself as the solution. And having an ear to the ground like that can help you better predict future hiring that might happen in that industry or at that company. Obviously, yes, you want to keep an eye out on those job boards, although I'm not a big fan of applying to jobs all day, every day online. So use alerts, set filters, get them emailed to you so that you're at least screening through daily job lists and industry-specific job boards, not just wading through the endless array of jobs on monster.com, right? Keep your filters so that things are coming into your inbox. So you're not just completely wasting time online while trying to feel productive. And also consider wide filters on things that you're very negotiable about. So let's say you're looking for a very specific high-level leadership job, or a specific industry, like you really want to do graphic design, but you also want to have, you want to work internationally. And that can be very specific, right? Those are some specific desires. But if other components of the job description are very open to negotiation, like you're willing to move pretty much anywhere, keep those factors very open, right? When you're thinking about filtering your job. So don't over filter on the things that you don't really care that much about. So consider if you would move across the country for a job, or if you would be willing to otherwise make big changes, like on salary. I've worked with lots of attorneys who are looking for high purpose jobs, even though they know that might mean that their salary is going to take a little bit of a nosedive. So your priorities are your prerogative. You've already gotten clear on your goals. Don't waver from them when you're doing this job search. Just because you're qualified doesn't mean that's the job you want. And finally, the last critical piece of advice here is do not get stuck on the internet. Do not get sucked into the black hole of your computer screen, because honestly, it tricks you into feeling like you're being productive, even though you might not actually be getting closer to your goals. And it's depressing and isolating. So continue growing and leveraging your network. Ask people outright to keep their ears to the ground for you, right? Ask them to be your boots on the ground. Ask them to keep you in mind when they hear about job opportunities, and be persistent about following up with them and seeing how things are growing at their company. Position yourself as the help that they've been waiting for. And really, some tactics that I've heard work very well for people like Carrie Ann, who you'll be able to read about on the Bossed Up blog on Friday. She set concrete goals around how many coffee meetings and phone interviews, or sorry, not phone interviews, informational interviews that she aimed to have every week. And I think it was like a very ambitious goal, like 2 coffee meetings a week or 2 phone interviews, informational interviews a week over the phone and 1 coffee meeting. So really set goals like that you know you can achieve because they're in your control, and be persistent about growing and leveraging that network. That's where the real jobs that don't even make the job boards are going to come from. And when it comes to those job boards that you want to keep an eye on, head over to the blog at this link in your workbook to see the 18 sites that we recommend you bookmark for job seekers. So your checklist, we just went over it. It's a solid start, clearly. You've got a lot of work to do, but that's okay, because hopefully it feels more organized and you got some more tools in your tool belt as of right now. But remember, this is just the beginning. So join us for that Pregame Your Career Change Challenge. Again, it is totally free. It's an 8-week challenge in which we're going to walk through these lessons, all of these 8 steps in much greater depth, week to week. And we're going to do them together with hundreds of women across the country, thousands of women across the country, and even across the world. So you're going to get those weekly lessons with all of those detailed scripts, or sort of those lesson plans on how you're going to take action that week in a measurable but manageable way. So you'll actually gain a community of courage and accountability along the way. And we can make this happen together step by step. So I hope you don't feel overwhelmed. I know we just went over a lot. I want to pause here and ask you to really share your questions. You can head over to bossedup.org/pregame to sign up for the Pregame Your Career Change Challenge. But I want to make sure that you have a chance to weigh in on Twitter at bosseduporg. And I thought I had the Q&A set up, but I don't for some reason here, because I think the transition that Google Hangouts on Air is going through to YouTube made the Q&A thing impossible tonight. But I've got Twitter right here, so please, I will stay online for the next few minutes to hear from you. If you have any questions, what did you learn from tonight? Did you fill out that career checklist? Do you feel like you've got a manageable plan for moving forward? Remember, the highest predictor of success when it comes to these long-term goals, like landing the job of your dreams, is to have an action plan and really focus on the step-by-step nature of it. Not to get totally caught up in the big grand vision, right? Because that can get really distracting, or it can feel like we're not quite sure what that even is. So focus on the step-by-step action plan. I hope you've left tonight with that checklist, with more reasonable and manageable expectations and next steps. And if you want to go even deeper with me, join that Career Change Challenge now at bossedup.org/pregame. The last thing I will say is that for some of you who aren't aware or aren't Bossed Up Bootcamp alums already, we have Bossed Up Bootcamp, our weekend-long training program for women navigating career transition, in which we bring together experts across work, love, and wellness for a really holistic, intensive, intimate training weekend. It's not a big conference. It's a, one-track training that's highly interactive, all research-driven, and it's an opportunity for folks who want to really make that have that in-person experience and really meet people from all over the country and even internationally who fly in for our boot camps. We've got one coming up next weekend in DC, which is very exciting. And then we also have one coming up in DC next month, and then Boston in November. And soon, I promise, we will be announcing all of our plans for 2017 as well. So I'm just checking Twitter right now. Thank you for joining me, bosses. I really appreciate your time and attention all evening long with me. I don't know. I feel like I must have answered all of your questions because I'm not seeing things come in. Thank you, Aurorna, on the Bossed Up webinar tonight to learn about finding a new job. Awesome. I hope you've got some new tools in your toolbox and resources to boot. Just want to make sure. I don't want to hop off if you're like penning the perfect tweet to me. Let's see. Also, tell me where I should go to eat in Chelsea Market for dinner tonight if you've been, because there are so many options there. On a totally different note, that I'm meeting some really awesome friends with, or awesome friends there, but I don't know where we're gonna eat just yet. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me tonight. If you do think of any questions after the fact, feel free to shoot them my way. I'm going to email you more details tomorrow morning, including a link to this recording, which you should be able to find on our YouTube channel soon, but I will be taking down. So it's a limited time only type replay. So get your friends involved. If you know someone who is job searching or could benefit from this kind of stuff, please feel free to share far and wide. I really think that this is the kind of information that can help us all lift as we climb, right? As we get after the life and career that we want to take other bossed up women, especially, up with us. So thank you again for your time and your attention. I'm gonna stop riffing on the old YouTube Google Hangout, but I certainly appreciate you hanging on there with me. And if I do see any tweets come in tonight, I will answer you. So thanks. Keep awesome. Have an awesome rest of your night, and thank you for tuning in.